You are traveling with a small group across open land. Suddenly, you trip and fall. A sharp pain shoots through your leg. When you look down, you realize something is badly wrong. You cannot stand. You cannot walk. There are no hospitals, no doctors, no ambulances. You are far from any shelter, surrounded only by the people traveling with you. The group stops. One person kneels beside you and looks at your injured leg. The others look worried. They know the group cannot continue as planned. You try to stand again, but the pain forces you back to the ground. Your leg may be broken. Today, this would mean an ambulance, an X-ray, and a cast. But what happened thousands of years ago? What did ancient humans do when someone in their group broke a bone? Most people picture the worst version of this story. A hunter falls, and that is the end. Left behind, abandoned to predators or the cold, because a group constantly on the move could not afford to carry someone who could not walk. That image feels realistic. It feels like survival logic, and it is almost completely wrong. The evidence tells a very different story, and it comes from a place you would not expect, inside old bones themselves. When a bone breaks and is never treated, it tends to heal badly or not at all. It heals crooked, or infection sets in, or the person simply does not survive long enough for it to heal. But archaeologists have found something surprising in the skeletal remains of ancient humans and Neanderthals: healed fractures. Not just healed, but healed cleanly enough that the bone kept something close to its original shape. One of the clearest examples comes from Shanidar Cave in what is now northern Iraq. A Neanderthal skeleton found there, commonly referred to by researchers as Shanidar 1, shows a remarkable combination of old injuries: a crushed eye socket, damage to one arm severe enough that it may have affected its use for years, a leg injury, multiple healed fractures across the body, all showing signs of bone remodeling, the slow biological process where bone rebuilds itself after damage. This individual did not die from these injuries. He lived with them for what researchers estimate could have been years afterward, based on how completely the bone had healed by the time he died. That single skeleton complicates the abandonment story completely. A person with an arm that likely could not function normally and healed leg trauma was not left behind to die the moment he became a burden. He kept living inside a group. But here's the harder question. Living with an old healed injury is one thing. Surviving the first days after a fresh, violent break is another problem entirely. And that is where the real danger begins. Picture the moment again. You are on the ground, your leg will not hold weight. The group cannot simply carry you the way they carry a bundle of firewood, not for long distances, not without cost to everyone else's energy and safety. The obvious modern assumption is that ancient people had no real medical knowledge, so an injury like this came down to luck alone. But anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies used here only as a comparison and not as a perfect replica of the deep past, have documented something important. Groups with no hospitals and no formal medicine still developed consistent, learned methods for treating broken limbs. Splints made from wood or bark, bindings made from plant fiber, sinew, or hide strips, padding to reduce pressure on the injury. Immobilization, keeping the limb still, is one of the oldest instincts in human injury care, and it does not require writing anything down. It only requires watching it work once and remembering. A likely version of what happened to you may have looked something like this. Someone presses your leg gently, feeling for where it is wrong. Straight branches or stiff bark are gathered nearby. Strips of hide or plant fiber are wrapped around the leg and the splint together, tight enough to hold the bone still, loose enough not to cut off blood flow completely. You are in serious pain. There is no anesthetic. There is no clean bandage in the modern sense. But there is pressure, stillness, and people who are not leaving. Someone else builds a small shelter around where you now have to stay, using branches leaned against a rock or a fallen tree, enough to break the wind and hide you from open sky at night. This is not comfort for its own sake. Exposure is its own threat. A body already dealing with the shock of a broken bone loses heat faster, and a cold night can weaken someone just as much as the injury itself. Water becomes the next problem. If the river is still a distance away, someone has to carry it back in a hide pouch or a hollowed container, trip after trip, instead of everyone drinking freely at the source the way they normally would. Food has to be gathered and brought to you, rather than eaten where it is found. None of this is dramatic. It is repetitive, exhausting, unglamorous work, carried out by people who gain nothing physical from it except your continued survival. That last part matters more than any splint. A broken leg on its own is rarely the thing that kills a person in the deep past. Infection is. An open wound, exposed to dirt, insects, and bacteria with no antiseptic, can turn a survivable injury into a fatal one within days. Fever, swelling, and spreading infection were very real threats, and there is no evidence ancient humans could reliably stop severe infection once it took hold. This is one of the honest limits of ancient care. Splinting a bone was possible. Fighting deep infection consistently was not. So healing depended on more than the injury itself. It depended on how clean the wound stayed, how still the leg was kept, how much food and water the person received while immobile, and how long the group was willing to slow down or stay in one place. That is where cooperation becomes the real medicine. A person who cannot walk still needs to eat, still needs water, still needs protection from cold nights and curious predators drawn to the smell of blood. In a mobile group, this means someone else brings food, someone else keeps watch, someone else may have to carry water back to a camp that would normally have moved on days earlier. This is expensive. Every day the group stays near an injured person is a day not spent traveling toward better hunting ground, fresher water, or safer terrain. There would have been real tension in this decision, even if no one said it aloud. Stay and risk running low on food for everyone. Move and risk losing the injured person entirely. And the danger does not stay still just because you cannot move. A predator drawn by the smell of blood does not care that the group has slowed down for good reason. Weather does not wait for a fracture to heal before the rain arrives or the temperature drops. If the group has stopped near a place with limited food nearby, hunger becomes a second, quieter threat, one that grows with every extra day spent in one location. Caring for you is not a single decision made once beside the fire. It is a decision the group has to keep making, morning after morning, for as long as your leg refuses to hold weight. The fact that healed fractures exist at all tells us which choice often won. There is a reversal worth sitting with here. We tend to imagine ancient life as a place where only the strongest survived and the injured were left behind as dead weight. But an individual who cannot hunt, cannot walk, and cannot immediately contribute anything physical still survived long enough for bone to fully remodel. That does not happen by accident. It happens because a group decided, in some form, that this person was still worth keeping. Researchers who study this evidence describe it as one of the earliest visible signs of sustained caregiving in the human story, long before anything resembling medicine as we know it existed. Not certainty about emotions or exact conversations, those details are lost. But the physical record of survival itself is difficult evidence to argue with. The exact methods almost certainly varied. Different environments meant different splinting materials. Different group sizes meant different capacity to support an injured member, and not every injury ended well. Some broken bones in the archaeological record show poor healing, deformity, or signs that the person lived with permanent disability afterward. Some individuals likely did not survive at all, and those cases leave far less trace, because bones that never heal, or bodies that were never recovered, tell fewer clean stories. The survivors we find are not proof that every injury turned out fine. They are proof that survival was possible, not guaranteed. A group size probably mattered a great deal here, though the details are uncertain. A larger group could absorb the loss of one hunter's labor for a while without starving. A very small group faced a harder version of the same problem, where every missing set of hands was felt immediately. Anthropologists studying recent hunter-gatherer societies note that group size and environment shape how much care an injured member can realistically receive, which is a reminder that there was probably no single universal answer across the ancient world. What held true in a resource-rich river valley may not have held true on a cold, exposed plain with little food to spare. There is also the question of what an injury like this meant for someone over the following months. Even a cleanly healed fracture can leave a leg weaker, a joint stiffer, a stride permanently changed. A person who once hunted at full speed might spend the rest of their life doing different work, closer to camp, more focused on tools, childcare, or teaching than on chasing animals across open ground. That kind of shift is not a failure. It may be one of the earliest quiet examples of a group adapting its social roles around what an individual could still contribute, rather than discarding someone the moment their body changed. Back in your moment on the ground, none of this is comforting in the way modern medicine would be. There is no guarantee. The leg might heal crooked. Infection might still take hold in the coming days, but you are not alone with it. Someone is pressing bark against your shin. Someone else is already scanning the tree line for firewood, because you will not be moving camp tonight, and that means a fire has to last. This single injury reveals something modern comfort tends to hide from us. Today, a broken bone means a hospital visit, a scan, a cast, and a follow-up appointment weeks later, mostly handled by strangers we trust because of a system, not a relationship. In the deep past, healing depended entirely on the people physically around you. There was no institution to fall back on. There was only whether the group beside you chose to slow down. That difference may explain something that still lives inside modern humans. The instinct to physically show up for someone who is hurt, to sit with them, to bring them food without being asked, is old. Older than hospitals, older than medicine, older than written history. It is not a lesson people invented. It is a behavior that helped a group of early humans keep an injured man alive long enough for his bones to heal, long enough for archaeologists to find him thousands of years later and ask how. It may also explain why isolation during illness or injury feels so specifically difficult, even now, even with modern medicine available. A cast from a hospital can set a bone. It cannot replace the older, deeper expectation carried inside the body, that when something goes wrong, other people are supposed to notice, slow down, and stay close. That expectation was not built by convenience. It was built by necessity. In a world where staying close to an injured person was sometimes the only thing standing between healing and disappearing from the record entirely. You are still on the ground when the fire starts. The pain has not gone anywhere. The leg will take a long time to trust again, but no one has walked away. And somewhere in that decision, made without hospitals, without medicine, without any guarantee it would work, is the same instinct that still pulls a modern person toward a friend who is struggling, even when there is nothing certain they can do to fix it.